everybody. I'm here at the Studio Theater in Exile at the Hudson Valley MOCA, a museum on Main Street in Peekskill, New York, for another interview with a fabulous person that I found on the planet for you. Well, tonight I have a really interesting person. He's a friend of mine as well, or maybe I should say she's a friend of mine. Her name is Keke, and she is a trans performer, and some people call it drag queen. And I have to say, she's absolutely fabulous, and she's here to meet you today. Keke, you're here. You made it.
I know. Finally. Actually, I was able to watch a couple episodes, and I gotta say, I really think that it's great, that you are giving people this kind of exposure to be able to not only talk about what it is that they do and what they provide, but people can really get insight into who they are and why it is they do what they do.
Right, something that they might normally not be exposed to, at least as intimately as we can talk about it here.
Oh, and I love a good little intimate talk.
Yes, intimate's good. I like them too.
How you doing, hon?
I'm doing okay, but I ask the questions here. How are you doing? And that's the
I'm
most
good.
important thing. You do look fabulous.
Thank you.
And I have to say, a lot of people that watch the show, a lot of people, they've heard the term drag queen or drag, and they don't really know what it means. How would you define it in your words?
So there's two ways that, somebody can look at this, right? The literal sense of drag, which is, somebody of the opposite gender that is putting on clothes of the opposite gender and portraying the opposite gender or the same gender. But for me, drag really is waking up, putting your game face on, and sometimes not letting the world see what's behind the mask all the time. And we all do that, right? We do it at work. We do it, sometimes at social gatherings. We do it when we're interacting with people that, we feel like we always have to be on. So I guess that's, that would be my true definition of drag, is just being on. Because really, sometimes, it's a character, and we have to put on that character to kind of get through the day. To quote Mother RuPaul, we're all born naked and the rest is drag.
RuPaul, the audience might not know, is a drag performer. She's been around for years.
Ooh,
And she has her non-drag side and she has her drag side, and she goes full throttle.
Absolutely. And what I can appreciate about RuPaul is that, one, she has given a platform to so many people to do the same thing, which is share their artistry, right, and to share who they are in what they do. And my goodness, I've seen many a performer, and that's really what gets me, is seeing somebody perform. And to me, when I see somebody kind of take their stakes to a certain place where they're like, you know what, I know that this might be a little uncomfortable for me, but I really need to do this to kind of have my aha breakthrough moment, that's drag.
Ah, okay. I wonder sometimes, is it more uncomfortable for the people that are viewing than it is actually for you? Because you feel comfortable like this. I mean, you have a regular job.
I do.
And you dress tastefully, although it's in drag, not as drag as this, but it's obvious. Yeah.
Yeah, I would say, the interesting dichotomy with that is, well, back to the point about things being uncomfortable. I think art is supposed to be uncomfortable, right? Not just for the artist, but for the audience. Art is meant to provoke something in somebody that they may not have thought about before, or something that they may not have thought about in a very long time. And then for us as the performer, we're quite literally giving people a piece of ourselves sometimes, right? People that I think do an amazing job of that. Some drag queens that I know, Julie J in the city, she is a phenomenal trans performer. Daniela Darling, Marie, Nani, Tsunami, like just to name a couple of people. These are really, really phenomenal artists, and they really put it all out there. They really do. And so it's seeing people like that inspires me to do what I do.
So when did you decide? When did you say, oh, I got to come out, I got to do this?
Whew.
Because you're a young man, you're a young person.
Yeah, young lady.
Young lady. Okay, you're a young lady.
I really picked up, the whole concept of drag, or at least what I thought the concept of drag was during COVID. That's when I started watching Drag Race. That's when I started getting into makeup. And I was just sitting and going at it. Like, my face was my canvas and the world was my oyster at that point. Granted, my world being the room, because I couldn't leave
Yeah,
my room.
right.
And so it kind of just picked up from there slowly. But once I had moved back to New York from California, around like 2021, I started going out more and I started trying to, explore the city, kind of be more part of the communities that I wanted to see. And I went to one of Julie J's events that they had in Brooklyn called Stand Up NYC, which is a benefit for just, different queer programs and organizations that help provide different resources. And I mean, like, she has done everything across the board. But I had went to go see two headliners that were on RuPaul's Drag Race. And it was phenomenal seeing them. I absolutely loved seeing them. I would see them again. But what got me were the local girls. Something about just that raw, like, untapped, like, not every great artist you see is always on TV. There are other artists that exist out there that, honestly do laps around these girls that are on TV. With all respect to them, but it was that, and I looked at my partner during that show, and I was like, I have to do this. I have to do this because it is making me feel such a weight in my spirit that, like, I gotta get going. I gotta do it. And, I kept saying I gotta do it, I gotta do it, I gotta do it. But I would find myself physically prepping myself for drag. I'm like scrolling through Amazon, adding stuff to my cart, buying things, and then, before I know it, I have like a wig, a waist cincher, and some tights at my front door, and I'm like, oh, okay, so I'm gonna start doing this.
How did that feel?
Whew. At the time, very liberating. Now that I look at it as a little bit more of a developed performer, I was like, ooh, we had to fix some things. But at that moment, it really was like, it hit me that this is something that not only am I feel in my bones that I have to do, it unlocked another part of me that really opened my life up for the better. And that was like really just coming into my womanhood. I kind of was floating around with the idea of, well, maybe I'm not all the way a girl. Maybe I like bouncing between the two different gender spectrums. But the more that I've done drag, the more that I've been around people within that same community too, and just heard their stories and, felt a similar, experience. I was like, no, like, this is what I have to do. And, I was able to start hormone therapy at some, last year. And I feel great, and I really do owe that to drag, because drag has really let me sit in the fact that, honestly, it doesn't matter what I look like, as long as I feel like I'm doing myself justice and respecting myself and honoring myself. That's really what's the most important part.
Do you ever take anybody under your wing, like younger people than yourself, and maybe let them feel more confident?
Actually,
Because you're a young lady yourself.
well, yes. I also, that brings up a really good point too, just because a lot of people think that in order to kind of have that kind of, je ne sais quoi of being this role model, of being this leader, that you have to have years and years and years and years and years of experience under your belt. And I couldn't think that further from the truth.
Yeah.
Just because, just because you've been doing something for so long doesn't always mean that you're good at it, right? Really what comes with it is the drive, right? Is, the passion for it, but also the mentality of there is always room to grow. There is never going to be this final level. There's never going to be this cap. And so having an open mind to be like, there's always going to be somebody in a room that knows more than I do.
True.
It just helps out with that. All that to say, I try my best to be a positive example of what most would call a good human being, right?
Yeah.
Just having conversations with other people, trying to be an ear, providing advice when it's warranted, But but just showing people that with enough drive, determination, you really can just do whatever the heck you want to do, as long as you're putting your whole heart into it.
Now, your performances are basically performances. Now, did you have to embrace another, I'll say, vernacular of training? Did you take voice lessons? Did you take dance lessons? How to carry yourself? Charm school?
So, funny enough, a lot of people that have gotten into drag in one way, shape, or form have come from the performing arts world. When I was going, to Peekskill High School, a couple years ago, more than a couple years ago, I was heavily involved, with the theater programs and the choir program and the band. So I had always been surrounded by performance my entire life. And I kind of picked up like the different infinity stones of performance. I did do theater, I did musical theater, I was singing, I was playing instruments, I was acting. And so at one point, I was in college and I had a real heart-to-heart with myself. And I was like, all right, girl, we need to get together and we need to figure out what we're gonna do with all of these resources, because it's great to have so many resources, but we need to find a way to put them together and make them work. And just time and patience, and I was brought to the art form of drag.
You're certainly multidimensional, I must say.
Thank you.
Because when I saw you at your job, I was like, wow, I wasn't like, I was stunned, but somehow it made me feel happy that you were so comfortable in your own skin.
Yeah.
And I imagine it takes a lot to get to that point, especially considering, social norms, really.
Yeah, it's been interesting area to navigate, specifically at my job. As you know, I work for a financial institution, and so there's certain parameters of like dress that we have to fall into. And my go-to, outside of work is a nice short, a nice low-cut T-shirt, and maybe a big flannel on top of it. But it's really pushed me to kind of like really understand the things that women also just go through. Like, we're expected to be put together in a certain way, where it's like, why do we have to wear like all these 5 different layers and then a guy can come in a T-shirt and jeans? Like, why can't I come in a T-shirt and jeans and it's not a problem and I won't get a funny look? Because that's happened to me. I've shown up to work, mid-transition now, where I do look a little visually different, but I'll dress a little bit more masculine and people will kind of look at me like, so what's going on here? And not that for me, it's water off a duck's back, because at the end of the day, like I said, I know who I am. But it's really pushed me to be like, you know what? Beauty is pain, beauty is pain, beauty is pain.
Beauty is pain.
Beauty is pain, and I think what I mean by that is a sense of like, discomfort is necessary for growth. And the reason why I say discomfort isn't because I'm not comfortable with my body. It's just that I have always been in this space where, I have, thought about what people think. Who wouldn't? I think that's just a normal human thing. Is like, okay, well, if I wear this color, do I feel like I'm gonna give off this vibe today? Or, like, if I put my hair in this specific position, like, is it gonna look too messy? And so really just being like, I kind of don't care what people are gonna say or look at me, as long as I'm continuing to, like I said, respect myself and give myself justice and do my due diligence to me, I'm good.
I notice your coworkers are very supportive and defensive, of each other, I'll say.
Yeah.
And you're accepted there, and I can see that they're comfortable with you, and you are comfortable with them.
I think it's really funny too, going through this process in my life. At this point in time, I'm going to be 25, which is really around the time that people are like, your frontal lobe is going to start to develop. So your mind's going to be expanding. You're not going to think like a kid anymore. So doing this mid-transition, taking hormones, chemically changing my body, it gives me different ideas and concepts. And so, like, I've had conversations with some very heterosexual coworkers of mine, where we both learned things about each other, where we were like, wow, and it really showed us like you really got to cast bias aside when it comes to, dealing with other people, and sometimes you have to give people the opportunity to be themselves.
Yeah. How about your customers?
Customers, a lot of the customers have been very, very warm. I really don't disclose personal things about myself at my job to my customers. And the fact that most of them call me ma'am or mija or girl, or miss, without me having to say anything, it really does make my heart feel warm. And it lets me know too that, you know, if people really, really want to, commit to just making the world a little bit more of a peaceful place, they'll do it.
Yeah, the acceptance is important.
Very. And I think that, that's a big thing because a lot of people think that support and acceptance are synonymous, but they're not. And to me, I feel like support weighs a little bit heavier on the heart just because support really is like, I back you, I got you, I'm with you. But acceptance is the first step into support.
Acceptance is the first step into support. I like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, you seem to have a really, really healthy attitude about who you are and where you're going.
Like you said, it took a lot of work to get there. And I have my days, right? I always tell people there's really never going to be a day where you're going to be 110% okay with everything because there's always going to be that one thing that goes wrong. But it's about learning to manage the episode that happens when that thing goes wrong, right? And I think too, like, a lot of people, wouldn't consider a drag queen kind of saying things like this, but these are real life instances that we have to think about sometimes, and we have to deal with certain kinds of things that a vast majority of the general public won't. When not even just catcalling, but in our minds, no place is a safe space for us. Why? Because this world is not a safe space for us right now. And so we always have to be on guard, and we always have to have these walls up sometimes. And so that's why too, I really am trying to make some effort into creating some safe spaces locally. I think that's what we need, because not everybody can afford to go down to the city all the time.
That's true. A lot of people are afraid.
Yeah, and rightfully so. I mean, I wouldn't want to take the city, or I wouldn't want to take the train down to the city, and get ready on the train. I wouldn't want to do that. I've seen too many things on the Metro North, even coming on the way up from the city, where I'm good on that.
Yeah, like on Halloween.
Ooh.
Ooh.
Listen, that's my birthday, not too much.
Oh,
Too
really?
much. Yes.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I know.
That's interesting. So, what was I going to ask? So what do you think is the next performance and the next thing for you in terms of performance? Because you're going to hone your skills, I'm sure.
I just recently did a month-long competition at Gleason's called Now That's What I Call Drag. And it was basically a lip sync competition where two performers each would, go against each other, and it was kind of like a one goes down, one goes up kind of situation.
Wow.
Like, think WrestleMania, but with lip syncing drag queens.
Okay.
And so it was a really, really, really great time, not just for the audience, but even like the entertainers. They felt like they really made a good mark on themselves. And I mean, the way that they were received by the community of Peekskill really blew me back. Our winner, actually, her name is Blackmail. She had a cute little fan club of these young girls. Every single night they came to see her. They were rooting for her. Finale night, they made little signs.
Oh.
And then after she had won, they gave her artwork that they made of her. And it was actually very, very, very beautiful. And so it's things like that that continue to push me to do what I'm doing. And so because of how well that show was received, Gleason's actually is working with me on being able to have a monthly show.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so it's called, Now That's What I Call Drag Sunday Specials.
Okay.
Kind of brings you back to when like Vivo used to play like music videos like every Thursday, once a week, something along the lines of that.
Oh, wow, that's something. So you're doing good business for them.
Well, and that's the thing about supporting the places that support you. John Sharp and Hallie have been absolutely amazing to work with, and I'm very grateful to them for giving me that space. But the way that they also support the show, you know, the way that they react about us being there. And, you know, the whole entire month, you know, I was so cautious about timing because I just didn't want to step on anybody's toes. And you know, I would always talk to Hallie and check in with her on things. And she would just tell me, like, you're fine. People are having a great time. Everything is going smoothly. Like, you do what you got to do. And I really couldn't have asked for a better space. I mean, oh my goodness.
I'm so glad that they're supporting you.
Listen, it's a big deal, you know. I think Peekskill hasn't seen something like this in a little while.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, there have been drag shows. I think John Sharp was into that before Gleason's.
I believe so,
At
because a lot of people
Birdsall
would tell me
House.
about Birdsall.
Yeah, I used to look out my window. I used to live across the street and see the shows. And I'd be walking home from wherever, and I'd see the queens coming through. I was like, hey, you know? It was exciting.
It is, because you know, it is an attention grabber. I mean, you know, I'm okay to call a spade a spade. It's an attention grabber, but the premise of it, and I always try to explain this to people, it's not always so much about the show, but what the show comes with and what it brings.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of times in the city, people go to drag shows and they're not even paying attention to the show. Most of the time, they're actually conversing amongst themselves, you know, mingling with other community members, just because those are also just safe spaces. Listen, I feel safe next to another drag queen, okay? That is my first line of defense.
Okay.
You know, it's just a different type of grip. But, you know, all that to say, these shows are creating places for other people within our queer community to come out and feel like, oh, there's something for me to do here now. Like, there's something that I can participate in. There's something that I would be able to go to and actually enjoy myself.
Right.
You know, I think that we need to kind of cater to everyone in a sense.
Yeah.
You know, listen, I'll be real, you know, the next generation's got the rest of the future on their shoulders, which is my generation.
Yeah, it is your generation. You're very young.
And so, you know, I think giving the movers and shakers some time to move and shake in a good way is going to be beneficial.
It will be, I know. I'm going to, you know, just sort of digress a little bit, as we talked about it a little bit before the interview tonight. The history of drag. You were talking about the opera. You know, tell the audience a little bit about that.
So, drag, always been around. Always been around. I mean, you know, I was telling you, I can't remember the name, but it was Beethoven or Mozart, one of the two. They would write these parts for these young boys, but the voice register would be in a soprano or an alto vocal range. And so, you know, obviously they're not gonna get a little boy that's not technically classically trained to do these songs, so they would have women dress up as these boys and do these numbers. Great showcase of that. You know, SNL did something super funny, where Ariana Grande was like a little boy. You know,
I think I saw that.
it was completely hilarious. But that's exactly, you know, where, you know, part of that comes out from. And then moving on to that, you know, once you get into like Shakespearean plays, you know, the female parts would be played by men. And then even moving further down the line, you know, if people really kind of want to find a place to figure out where drag came from, you really got to give it up to, you know, the ballroom scene. You know, so from 1960 to, you know, really now, it started in Harlem, but it was a bunch of African Americans just coming together and creating these categories so that they can experience, you know, what it's like to live a real life without judgment, without, you know, fear of condemnation, without fear of somebody killing you, without fear of somebody trying to put you in jail. You know, I think the closest thing that we have to a good, semi-good representation of what that time was like, you know, it was the show Pose. It did show a lot of real things that did happen at that time. But, you know, everything that the queer community has right now is thanks to ballroom culture, is thanks to trans women of color, is thanks to trans men of color, is thanks to just people of color in general. You know, a lot of our pop culture comes from ballroom, you know, and I think a lot of people have to remember that a lot of the things that we have right now, including us in the queer community, aren't always ours. paying respect to those places. Because really, it wasn't about being a drag queen. It was about emulating the white American dream as much as possible.
Oh, really now?
That's really because then people would call that the realness.
Okay, that's a loaded statement in many ways. But I appreciate your honesty about that.
That's what
Your
it was at the
candor.
time.
Yeah.
That's what it was for them, because they were like, how can I be that woman walking down Fifth Avenue in that mink coat?
Yeah. I noticed the strand of pearls, classic. It brings everything together, and it really says that you are a woman of your own making.
I try.
Yeah.
I think small statements make the biggest noises.
Right. When you were, just to ask this question, I just am thinking, did you know this when you were like a little tot, or when did you realize?
I think I always knew. It's your same old story, a little boy going into mom's closet, trying on her heels, trying on her makeup, trying on her clothes.
Yeah.
I just grew up in a very religious household, and so, even as a young child to do that, in my head, it's like, ooh, God's gonna get you now.
Yeah.
And so that part of me just ended up getting buried way deep down. And it really wasn't until I started playing with makeup as an adult that I was like, I miss this. This feels natural. This feels good to me.
Yeah.
So in a way, yeah, I've kind of always known.
That's really wonderful. I kind of wish I could talk to you again. I'm so happy for you
I would love to come back.
because you're just like, you're happy.
I
It's
am.
hard to find a happy person to talk to these days.
Well, listen, happiness is a choice, right? There's a lot of things in life that we could all be melancholy about.
True.
But I'm choosing to look at the finish line because for some reason in all of this fire that we got going on around us, I see the biggest of grandiose things, for the future.
Yeah.
But it really is up to us to kind of just keep it pushing and really make the changes that have to be made.
Well, I have to say I really admire what you're doing, and I've seen you in a professional setting, and I was surprised, and it's like, wow, you could be trans, you're trans, but so tasteful. The little Jackie O back, no, that was
yes.
Jackie Kennedy that did that.
It was Jackie Kennedy.
Jackie O had a different look, and I'm just like completely happy that you agreed to do this interview.
Listen, again,
I really am
so ecstatic to be here. This is one of the things that I really enjoy talking about just because it means so much to me.
And you're educating people.
That's the biggest thing. And being open to that education is equally important.
Yeah, and you do a good job.
Well, thank you,
I have to say.
Toni.
I'm looking forward to seeing your upcoming show.
Please,
Shows,
please
plural.
come. Shows plural.
At Gleason's in Peekskill.
Yes, there'll be one Sunday a month.
Okay.
And then actually some really exciting news. They renewed me for a season 2 in September already.
Oh.
Yeah, so
okay, so
much
you're
to look
in.
forward to.
You're in like Flynn. You're in. That's really good. And I'm really happy that, a prominent business owner in this city is giving you and others a chance to be themselves.
Absolutely.
And very entertaining. I can't wait to see the show. I wish we could go longer. Oh,
Like
well.
I said, I'm
C'est la vie.
always more than happy to come back.
Okay, and you're always invited. You can be kind of like a friend of Talk with TQ.
I would love, we can
Yeah.
have some tea,
Yeah, we can
and
have
we'll
some-
spill the tea.
We'll spill the tea. Uh-oh, here we go. Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me,
Keke.
Toni.
And I'll tell the audience, check out Keke at Gleason's once a month, Gleason's in Peekskill, New York. And thank you so much for being here at Studio Theater of Exile, located at the Hudson Valley MOCA on Main Street in Peekskill. And we'll see you next time. Thank you. Bye.